Are you on an antidepressant, benzodiazepine or antipsychotic? Don't worry, I got it. Doctor, I'm feeling down. Chemical imbalance, you say? No side effects. Okay. Could it be the fact I lost my job and my boss is a bit of a knob? What's the root of the issue? Doctors will just dismiss you. But you're okay, because today you're listening to the Psych Med Sanctuary.
Hi, and welcome to the Psych Med Sanctuary podcast. I am Emma, and today I have decided to talk a little bit about the history of mental asylums, I suppose known as psychiatric units, psych wards, because through my experience with all of this, psych med, withdrawal and harm, I obviously ended up in 3 psychiatric units whilst I was in all these withdrawals from the medications. And what I witnessed in those places was just shocking. It was barbaric. And I sort of can't kind of get it out of my head, the whole thing. And when I shared about Springfield Hospital in my interview recently, and I was discussing my story, the first podcast episode, I talk a little bit about Springfield, and we went through the Google reviews, and there's lots and lots of things people have said and the awful things that go on in that place. And it still goes on today. So I feel passionate about it. And when I posted that video, I had so many people message me about their experiences in these places on all platforms. I got messages. So today I wanted to go through some historic stories about all of this and share a few people's stories, and maybe it might inspire others to tell their stories, and also maybe give you a little bit of validation if you have gone through these psychiatric units, mental asylums, and you're thinking, am I the only one this happened to? Okay, so to start, I've got some stuff here that I'm going to read to you, almost like storytelling, yeah? I'm just about to start my period, so I could just get this all wrong and fumble through it, but we'll see how it goes. Okay, we'll start with the 1500s. In modern English, Bedlam is a noun used to describe a situation of extreme noise, confusion, disorder, and uproar. Bethlehem Hospital, also known as Bedlam, was founded in 1247 in London and became infamous for its brutal treatment of the mentally ill. Originally a priory for the poor, it shifted focus to mental health care by the 14th century. By the 16th and 17th centuries, the hospital's reputation for inhumane conditions spread. Patients were often restrained, shackled, or confined to cramped, dark cells. Physical abuse was common, and mental illness was largely misunderstood. The institution became a public spectacle, with crowds paying to view patients as curiosities. Visitors would mock or laugh at those suffering, turning the hospital into a sideshow. This was interesting to read because I actually originally found Nellie Bly's story in 1887. And actually, Harry helped me with this, looking back further to the 1500s. And who knows, it could have gone further and further and further back. I'm sure it has. This whole historic way of dealing with mental health, and also the bizarre reality, shocking reality that these places actually exist. We have 1887 Nellie Bly's story. Nellie Bly, born Elizabeth Cochrane, was a pioneering 19th century journalist, famous for her 1887 undercover exposé, 10 Days in a Madhouse. She faked insanity to be committed to the Blackwell's Islands lunatic asylum, uncovering brutal conditions and neglect. Her work sparked crucial reforms and defined modern undercover journalism. September 1887, 23-year-old Nellie Bly walked into a New York City boarding house with a dangerous plan. Convinced everyone she was insane. She stared at walls, spoke in fragments, refused to sleep, claimed she couldn't remember her name. Within hours, the boarding house owner called the police. Within a day, doctors examined her, barely, and declared her positively demented. Within 48 hours, Nellie Bly was committed to the Women's Lunatic Asylum on Blackwell's Island. The commitment process was terrifyingly easy. No thorough examination, no family consultation, just a quick look from doctors who saw what they expected to see, another poor, strange woman who needed to be locked away. Which was exactly what Nellie wanted to prove. She was an undercover journalist for the New York World, volunteering for an assignment that could have destroyed her life. If something went wrong, if the newspaper failed to secure her release, if officials discovered her true identity, she could have been trapped there indefinitely, with no way to prove she was sane. But Nellie believed the story was worth the risk. What she found inside made her risk look small compared to what the women trapped there endured every single day. Blackwell's Island housed over 1,600 women in conditions that were less hospital and more torture chamber. The treatments weren't medical, they were punishments. Women were forced into ice-cold bars and left there for hours until their lips turned blue and their bodies went numb. The stated purpose was calming them down. The actual effect was hypothermia and terror. The food was inedible, rotten meat, bread so hard it could chip teeth, tea that looked like dirty water. Meals were served in filthy bowls, and women who complained were beaten or isolated. The nurses weren't caregivers, they were jailers who hit patients, mocked them and ignored their suffering. Women who cried out were locked in solitary cells. Women who begged for help were told to shut up. Doctors rarely visited, and when they did, they didn't listen. Complaints were dismissed as delusions, injuries were ignored, women deteriorated, not from mental illness but from neglect and abuse. But here's what made it even more horrifying. Many of the women weren't mentally ill at all. Some were immigrants who didn't speak English well and were committed because they couldn't explain themselves. Some were poor women with nowhere to go, dumped by families who couldn't or wouldn't care for them. Some were epileptic, disabled, or simply difficult, women whose families found them inconvenient and had them declared insane to be rid of them. Once you were inside, getting out was nearly impossible. Even if you protested your insanity, your protests were taken as proof of your madness. The system was designed to swallow women and never let them go. For 10 days, Nellie lived this nightmare. She watched women deteriorate. She saw abuse no human should endure. She memorized every detail, every name, every act of cruelty, because she knew she had to remember it all. When the New York World finally arranged her release, Nellie didn't just walk away, she sat down and she wrote everything. Her exposé, 10 Days in a Madhouse, was published in October 1887. The public reaction was immediate and furious. How could this be happening in modern civilized New York? How could women be treated like animals? How could the system be so broken that sane people were being locked away and tortured? A grand jury launched an investigation. They went to Blackwell's Island and confirmed every word Nellie had written. The conditions were exactly as horrific as she described. The result was swift and significant. New York City allocated over $1 million in additional funding for mental health care, an enormous sum in 1887. Staff received training. Patient treatment protocols were reformed, legal protections were put in place to prevent wrongful commitments. Lives were saved because one 23-year-old journalist was willing to risk everything to tell the truth. Nellie Bly's investigation became a landmark in both journalism and mental health reform. She proved that undercover reporting could expose injustice that would otherwise remain hidden. She showed that the powerless women with no voice, no advocates, no protection, could be heard if someone was brave enough to tell their stories. But she also revealed something darker, how easily society discards the vulnerable, how quickly a woman could be labeled insane and disappeared, how systems designed to help could become machines of cruelty when no one was watching. The asylum on Blackwell's Island is long gone. The island itself was renamed Roosevelt Island, and the asylum buildings were eventually demolished or repurposed. But Nellie Bly's courage echoes forward. Every time journalists go undercover to expose abuse in nursing homes, prisons, or institutions, they're walking in Nellie Bly's footsteps. Every time mental health reform is fought for and won, it builds on the foundation she helped create. She could have written about the asylum from the outside, relying on rumors and secondhand accounts. She could have interviewed former patients and doctors and called it a day. Instead, she walked through those doors herself, knowing she might never walk back out. She endured the freezing baths, the rotten food, the cruelty, because she understood that to tell the truth about suffering, sometimes you have to live it. That's not good journalism. That's moral courage of the highest order. Nellie Bly didn't expose the asylum system to win awards or make a name for herself. She did it because 1,600 women were suffering in silence and someone needed to give them a voice. She walked into the darkness so the rest of us could finally see what was happening there. And when she came out, she made damn sure the world wouldn't look away. How powerful is that story? It's so incredible. And when I read it, I just felt like I had to share it on this platform because I feel like it's sort of, well, it's an echo in a sense of what I experienced, and to see that she went in there off her own back to expose this kind of suffering. What I find still is people say to me, well, Emma, I'm sure they were looking after you. I'm sure it was fine in there, because people don't go in, they're confined spaces. People are locked in there, and your family can't come in. Your friends are not going to see what goes on inside there. It's very contained. And the amount of people that just look at me and think, oh, she's obviously just a bit dramatic, maybe she's in denial, or maybe she was hallucinating. It's very easy to call somebody crazy, when actually every single psych ward I was in was very traumatic. And it wasn't because of what I was going through. It was because of the actual place itself and the staff. So yes. Now to another story, 1973. So we're coming forward. Could psychiatrists tell if someone was actually insane? Stanford psychologist David Rosenhan wanted to find the answer. In 1973, he sent 8 perfectly normal people to mental hospitals across the US. What he found next exposed the secret side of psychology. Meet Rosenhan, a respected psychologist but also a skeptic. He believed psychiatric labels had more to do with perception than reality, so he designed an experiment to prove it. The team, 8 perfectly sane volunteers, a painter, a housewife, a pediatrician, a psychiatrist, 3 psychologists, and Rosenhan himself. Their mission? Get admitted to a psychiatric hospital across America. Their instructions were simple. Walk in, report hearing a single vague voice saying one word, empty, no other symptoms. Once inside, act normal, take notes, and try to get out. The results were immediate and shocking. Every single one was diagnosed as mentally ill. 7 labelled with schizophrenia, 1 labelled manic depressive. Not a single doctor suspected the truth. But the nightmare started after admission. Even when the pseudo-patients acted normal, eating meals, chatting with patients, taking notes, the staff interrupted everything as evidence of illness. Examples: writing notes, compulsive writing disorder. Being polite exhibits pathological need to please. Even flushing a toilet was logged as ritualistic behaviour. Here's the irony. The real patients saw through the act. 35 patients across multiple hospitals said, "You're not crazy, you're a journalist or a professor checking up on this place." Yet the doctors, nurses, and psychiatrists completely fooled. The label of insanity blinded them to reality. Average length of stay, 19 days. The shortest, 7 days. The longest, 52 days. The only way out? Admit to being mentally ill and agree to treatment. The treatment: antipsychotic drugs. Over 2,100 pills prescribed across the 8 pseudo-patients. Every single pill pocketed and discarded. When Rosenhan published his results in Science magazine, the psychiatric establishment exploded with outrage. Hospitals felt betrayed, doctors humiliated. One prestigious hospital challenged Rosenhan. "Send us your fake patients, we'll spot them." He agreed. Over 3 months, the hospital proudly declared they had detected 41 imposters. The twist? Rosenhan never sent a single person. Their paranoia fooled them into seeing fakes everywhere. This became known as the Rosenhan effect, the idea that psychiatric labels are so powerful they distort reality for doctors and patients alike. The fallout was massive. His study fueled the closing of many asylums, the rise of patient rights, and reforms in psychiatric diagnosis that shaped the DSM still used today. But it also left haunting questions. If experts couldn't tell sanity from insanity, what does that say about psychiatry itself? And how many lives were destroyed by a label that was never real? The takeaway: sometimes the scariest part of psychiatry isn't the patients, it's the system itself. Okay, so that was 1973 David Rosenhan. Very interesting story. Do look him up if you want to find out more. Next, we come all the way forward to a more recent article in 2023. BBC Panorama reporter Alan Haslan witnessed bullying and humiliation at the Edenfield Centre. Alan Haslan says himself, "A vulnerable young woman is locked on the other side of a thick glass window, crying like I have never heard anyone cry before. For hours, I have been sitting outside the small room listening to her desperate pleas to be let out. This is the image that haunts me from the 3 months I spent working undercover for BBC Panorama as a healthcare support worker. I went in to investigate whistleblower allegations about staff behaviour and patient safety at the Edenfield Centre in Prestwich, near Manchester, one of the UK's biggest mental health hospitals. Walking through the hospital doors for the first time, wired up with a secret camera, steadying my hand, swallowing my heartbeat, I thought I would surely be discovered, but I wasn't. I had spent months preparing for this role-playing with care specialists. Training arranged by the BBC left me confident I could give basic care to the vulnerable patients and diffuse potential violent situations. But the hospital did not know this. Instead, before starting work, Greater Manchester Mental Health, the NHS Trust, which runs Edenfield, gave me a one-day online induction. Then I was out on the ward floor looking after patients for up to 12 hours a day. I was paid £9.51 an hour, less than some supermarkets might pay me to stack shelves. The use of seclusion rooms was the first of many shocks I encountered. It's a difficult thing to comprehend for someone like me, who had never set foot in a mental health hospital before starting this investigation. Picture a small square bedroom a few metres wall to wall. Now strip away the carpets, wardrobes, drawers, mirrors, light fittings and picture frames. You cannot open the window and someone watches you 24 hours a day while you sleep, and even when you go to the bathroom. You cannot leave this room until someone else decides you are fit to. Seclusion is only supposed to be used in extreme cases for the shortest time necessary to prevent people harming others. But staff told me one woman had been confined like this for more than a year. I spent hour after hour tasked with observing patients locked in these rooms. Some of them left a huge impression on me. I had perfectly normal conversations with articulate, funny, and fiercely intelligent young people who have strong ambitions and desires to better their lives. But instead, these patients are locked away in the formative years of their lives. Not only that, they also told me that Edenfield was actually making them worse. That was a recent article, 2023. Seeing some patterns here, seeing some similarities with the stories. And as I read through these, it's like, wow, okay, this is like a tale as old as time. I'm going to bring us up to 2025, so just last year. And I actually got this story through from a woman when I shared my story recently in episode 1. And I was talking about Springfield Hospital, and I got a lot of people contacting me. And I just want to thank this woman for letting me share her story and what she went through. And obviously, I'm going to let her remain anonymous. Before I start this story, I just want to say people may feel slightly, I hate using the word triggered, stimulated, affected by the story. So I just want to be mindful of that before I read it. However, it's also really to share validation for others who have also suffered in these places and have gone in for genuinely actually for help and really needed help with their mental health. In July 2025, I had become non-compliant with my medication and attempted to end my life again. I was detained and admitted to Priory Hospital in Newbury under section. I was on one-to-one observations 24/7 and still harming myself. Staff would routinely discuss other patients' self-harm loudly and in graphic detail right outside my door. It felt like confidentiality didn't exist. It took over 2 weeks for the consultants to restart my medication again. When they finally decided to, my requests and past experiences were ignored. They chose to put me back on medication I had told them had not worked for me previously, so I refused to take it. My requests to try a new type of antidepressant were ignored. I also have anorexia nervosa. During my first 9 days at Newbury, I did not eat anything at all. Staff would try to talk me into having a meal, but I refused. During ward rounds, the consultants admitted to me that they were not equipped to support my eating disorder, but no discussion about moving me somewhere that could help me ever took place. A few times, they tried to use the threat of a feeding tube to scare me into eating, but it did not work. I would manage a few crackers per day. I was losing a lot of weight fast and even became a little jaundiced. I would get dizzy and lose my vision every time I stood up. I felt weak and my mum would tell me how fragile I looked during visits. One night I fainted in the corridor. I came back to consciousness and quickly went back to my room. My one-to-one followed behind me, but my fainting spell was never brought up during ward rounds or in discussion with staff. I had a huge bruise from where I hit the wall. Eventually, after 4 weeks, I was discharged home with nothing having actually been done to address why I was in hospital in the first place, with no medications restarted or new ones prescribed, and no attempt at therapeutic support. I came home more sick than when I went in, mentally and physically. She says, I strongly believe that inpatient psychiatric care urgently needs to be changed. None of my experiences have been good, from my first psych admission in my teens with child-adolescent mental health services to my most recent at 21. During every single one of my admissions, at least one traumatic experience has stuck with me. The lack of therapy or treatment offered, besides medication, and unhelpful, neglectful, and unfortunately often abusive staff members that make unwell people even more vulnerable and causes a distressing cycle of readmission in significantly unwell individuals. My experiences as a psychiatric inpatient will never leave me, and everyone else who I personally know has been admitted will tell you the same thing. It greatly disturbs me that so many others have experienced something similar to me. This is not healthcare. That is the end of our stories for today. And it feels quite emotionally affecting actually to read all of that out. I think it just makes me feel like this work is really important and this page is really important, and the power of sharing our stories, I think, is really important in this. I really don't understand why these places are allowed, and it feels like a very dark and disturbing corner of our society, or even as like the human race, to push and shove mental health into the dark. And people being misdiagnosed, that was really coming up there, wasn't it? And once you're actually admitted to these places, they're not places that you are supported and cared for, and all sorts of awful things go on. And I certainly experienced that. And I suppose we can take it up to, well, mine actually happened 4 years ago, but right to this recent date of me sharing my story about this and how I experienced the psychiatric units. And I definitely have already shared about this, but for this podcast, I will share a little bit about the summary of mine. I went through 3 psychiatric units because I ended up in benzo withdrawal, which obviously is the topic of this channel, psychiatric med, harm and withdrawal. And this withdrawal caused chronic insomnia, akathisia, where you can't stop pacing and you have these very fast, really dark thoughts. And it's the worst form of torture I think a human could possibly go through, akathisia. And that is caused by pharmaceutical medication, either being completely taken off it, or there's been too many changes. Doctors don't tend to currently know how to actually taper people off safely. We're all so different as well. So I'm definitely on the sensitive spectrum, chemically sensitive, and don't take well to medication in general. And there's a lot of people like me out there that I'm sure follow this page where medication just wasn't for you. All these symptoms I basically got. I got all the symptoms in the book of horror and torture, chemical terror. I can't even really explain a lot of the symptoms because a lot of them were inhumane. But what this led to was just months and months of torture and decline. And because I was wrongly diagnosed and no one recognized it, I therefore ended up sectioned because my behavior was completely erratic. I lost a whole bunch of weight. I wasn't sleeping. And I was really, really suicidal. I mean, suicidal ideation is part of this experience as well, of these really dark thoughts. And also you soon realize that this isn't recognized, this medication harm and withdrawal. So you feel like you don't have any hope. And this is also why this channel is here, to give you hope, because there is hope. So therefore I end up sectioned and no one believes me. And I end up in a hospital in Spain where no one speaks English, and it's very much a prison. It's a prison. And all they want to do is give you more and more medication. As soon as I was deemed insane, I was treated like a completely different person. Like I didn't have any sort of voice or rights. They take everything away from you. I was in rooms with restraints, and there were other people on the ward that were really very dangerous to be around. It didn't feel like a very safe environment, and there's nothing to do. It's like a barren wasteland in these places, you know. If you're feeling bad, this isn't the place to go. It was terrifying. And I was in there for 3 days. I managed to get out of there by actually trying to pretend that I was okay. That was horrific. And just very cold people. I remember saying, please, no more medication. It's the medication that's harmed me. Please, no more. And they just wouldn't listen. They got some security guards to actually literally pick me up and throw me into a room. And then he said, if you don't take this medication right now, we're going to have to restrain you and inject you with the medication. So I was forced. And I cannot tell you how terrifying that was, knowing that the medication was the problem and my nervous system was completely dysregulated and harmed, to be in a situation where I was going to be forced to have to take more. It was terrifying. And to be in that withdrawal state in that place, but also to witness how awful these places are anyway, even for somebody who isn't in withdrawal, was shocking. This theme carried on with the next 2 psychiatric units I ended up in. God knows how I was still alive. And this was back in the UK, one for 2 weeks and one for 2 months. And it was very much the same thing. You go in, no one actually speaks to you or listens to you or listens to your story or, really looks at you and thinks, hang on a minute, what's going on here? They deem you as insane. And as soon as you have that label, you are just treated like, I felt like I was treated like vermin on the floor. I had a security guard say to me, people like you are disgusting. You're a disgusting human. And I remember a nurse saying, is she anorexic? And there was just such disrespectful behavior. One of the staff members in one of these places spat at me. People were joking, making jokes out of the way I was because I was pacing a lot. They thought it was funny. It was just such an horrible environment. I cannot believe that I'm still here today, having gone through all of it. But I just wanted to echo what has been said here in these stories. And it's not to scare people. I actually really wanted this episode to make people feel validated in their experiences, like I said before, and perhaps prompt people to want to tell their story. I have found it really healing to tell mine and to give this whole experience a voice because it's so deeply traumatic to be treated like that in these places and for no one to hear you and believe you. That's a lot of pain to hold in the body. And I suppose I just hope this gives some validation to people out there. Also to say that if you are going through medication withdrawal and harm at the moment, this doesn't need to be your story. You don't have to end up in a psychiatric unit. And that happened to me because I got so much of the wrong advice. And it was also in the pandemic. People around me didn't believe me. I didn't really have anyone on my side. I was with family at the time. They just did not believe me. And therefore, my rights and my voice were sort of taken away. And it doesn't have to be your story, basically. And I hope that this channel can give people going through it the right information so it doesn't need to get to that stage as well of ending up in one of these places. And to say that I'd really like anyone to feel, if they want, to contact me at the psychmedsanctuary@gmail.com. And if they'd like to share their story about their time in a psychiatric unit, because I do actually want to do an episode sharing people's stories. I've done one today or a couple today. And again, thank you to the woman who sent this to me. If you feel like you would like to share your story, please do contact me. As I was saying back on the psychiatric units, the second and the third one, not to go into too much detail, but I just want to reiterate that they were horrifying places and none of them supported me and none of them made me better. They made me so much worse. And actually, the fact I'm here today was a pure miracle. The medication they gave me did not help me. And because I was so bad from the withdrawal itself and I wasn't sleeping for months on end, in the third psychiatric unit, they did give me quetiapine and mirtazapine, which did help me sleep. But in the other psychiatric units, I just wasn't sleeping. Nothing they gave me made me sleep because I think I was in the acute stage. So what I can say for that third one is I suppose that the medication they gave me did help me sleep, but I should never have ended up in that horrific state to begin with. And if a doctor had just told me, first of all, to never take lorazepam, but also to taper off it really slowly over 6 months to a year, then that would not have happened. I hope that has been informative and sending so much love and healing to people going through this out there, and that healing is totally possible. I am here after so much horror, living again, rebuilding my life, and I refuse to let this bullshit govern my life and ruin my life. And I know that you guys are going to heal from this. Also to say that we really appreciate everybody's support, and any comments and feedback you can give us is always welcomed. We are doing this completely off our own backs because we believe that it's a very important subject and any support is welcomed. So please do subscribe to this channel. I'm also on TikTok and Instagram, the Psych Med Sanctuary. And lastly, I do offer one-to-one support coaching calls, helping people go through this. And I love the fact that I'm telling you this in a hospital gown. But I've been doing this now for the last 3 years. And if you are struggling and having a bad time with medication harm, then please do contact me. Love.